Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Our Voices, an immersive composer collaboration project here at Eastman Opera Theater. My name is Stephen Carr. I'm the Associate Artistic Director of Eastman Opera Theater, and tonight it's my great pleasure to be joined by first of our composers, Anthony Davis. Anthony has written many operas, including X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, Lilith, Lear on the Second Floor, Amistad, Wakanda's Dream, and most recently, the Central Park Five, for which he was awarded the 2020 Pulitzer Prize. Anthony, thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
I thought I'd begin by asking you, what has influenced you as a composer over the years? Who or what would you say has influenced you?
Well, I've been influenced by a wide variety of things, a range of things. I mean, first I have to talk about, Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn and Charles Mingus and Thelonious Monk and that whole tradition of music. And that certainly influenced me a lot in terms of my development as a composer. Moving from being a classical pianist to becoming a jazz pianist and also as developing as a composer. Then I have to say, there were a number of composers, other composers that have, influenced me a lot, from Stravinsky and Berg to, Takemitsu, Lutoslawski. I mean, there are a number of them, that I feel affinity to, and I've learned something. You learn something from different composers. Benjamin Britten, I have to mention too. Schoenberg. I think you take things from different things you hear, and try to develop it in different ways. For me, it was interesting for me to, at one point, the connection between Sprechstimme and hip hop, for example. That one would normally think of Schoenberg and hip hop as having something in common, but there is something in common with the idea of how you employ speech rhythm and use speech rhythm in music, and that's certainly something that influenced that revelation when I was studying listening to both kinds of music, influenced me, and when I was creating X particularly.
So for the past few months, our students have had the opportunity to Zoom one-on-one with you and to talk through these pieces as they're learning them. And I remember you telling an interesting anecdote about how you used to listen to Billie Holiday. Is that right? And
Yeah.
I love as a composer, you were thinking in your mind, how would I notate this, what she does with a phrase on the page? How would I actually notate this? And as I've gotten to know these pieces over these months, and the students have learned them too, it's really fascinating because the way that you notate stuff, it's complex. But once it gets in you, once it gets in your bones, it gets under your skin. You can't imagine hearing it any other way. Just like the way Billie Holiday turns a phrase, right? Once you've heard it that way, you can't imagine it any other way.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at, because there's an indelible thing that Billie Holiday does with time and rhythm, that that at the one moment it sounds like rubato, but it's in time. It's a rhythmic freedom within a metric form. So that's something I look for, and I developed with a kind of polyrhythmic way of writing music. So I can think, for example, a lot of times my trick is, I might have something in, 13/8 or 7, and some kind of combined meter or something, and then when I go to write the vocal line over the rhythmic structure, I think, okay, and then I might think in a slower 4/4 tempo on top of it, because I want, it has the naturalness of that, and then also the flow of that in a way imagines music without bar lines, without the bar lines. So the bar lines are always artificial constructions, but for me it provides, how I use meter is to create the drive and momentum behind what's going on. That there's a kind of something that's compelled by the music. The music moves the scene forward, moves the character forward, all that stuff. And then, but the voice has to have freedom within that. It has to be, because otherwise the voice would be just as oppressed,
Hmm.
oppressed by the music. So I feel that tension between the freedom, the voice, the rhythmic freedom of the voice, and the expressivity of the voice over, with the rhythmic structure, it allows this idea, this dynamic of what is what is what are the primal forces that are there, and then how one finds free will within something that is compelled.
I mean, I think that's what every singer would love to hear from a composer. That sort of cherishing of the communication of the freedom. Um, tonight we're sort of for this program we're sort of taking a stroll through the gallery of some of your arias, and we're featuring stories from Amistad and Tania and Lilith and the Central Park Five, all very different stories. I'm wondering what draws you to a story, what makes you decide you want to set that.
Well, I think that story is, I think the drama of the story. One thing, I mean, sometimes it's a picture. Sometimes it, like when I did Tanya, uh, I was watching a production at Opera Theater St. Louis of Abduction in Sarajevo, the Mozart opera, and I was imagining, and it was a Graham Vick production. It was fantastic. I love the production of it, but I was imagining what Peter Sellers would do with it. So I started saying, oh, well, if Peter directed this, what would it look like? And he said, well, he'd probably do it as Patty Hearst. And because Patty Hearst, this idea of being abducted and, this whole thing and the relationship to Cinque and the SLA and stuff. So I was imagining this as I'm watching the opera. So then that night I had this vision of a soprano holding an AK-47, or, that I was seeing the poster.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
What I want to be. And I said, no, maybe I should write this. Maybe I should write an opera about Patty Hearst, and the Simonese Liberation Army, Tanya.
Yeah.
And so that was the initial revelation of it, and the Mozart kind of seeped into it in funny ways, like I thought of Blanchen and all the and what was interesting, uh, well, in Graham Vick's production, the Pasha was he wasn't a buffo character. He was obviously more civilized than Europeans,
Mm.
which is probably the reality of
Mm.
dealing with the Ottoman Empire or whatever,
Hmm.
whatever's being depicted there, because the Ottomans were the dominant power, and all the way through, that period of history. So then in dealing with that and the power dimension with the SLA and stuff, so then it began to take shape, and I was looking for someone who would have a writer who would have a similar vision, and I found Michael John LaCusa, who has a wicked sense of humor. So that was great.
Perfect. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier at the beginning, you just won the Pulitzer this year for the Central Park Five. And I read a really interesting quote. You said, it's very exciting for me that you can create political work that has an impact and speaks to issues in our society. I think this is something that we are all of us in opera are thinking about very much these days, is what is the role of opera in our consciousness as a culture?
Well, I think opera can play an important role. I think that it's been undervalued for that because, for one thing, in opera you can kind of sum up and look at the forces that create a dramatic moment. And for me, it's also about the identification of the audience, that the audience can identify with characters. So when they see Central Park Five, they become the Central Park Five, or their children are the Central Park Five, because and it doesn't matter in terms of race or anything, but this idea that through the music you can sort of understand and and identify with these people and imagine what they went through, in an interrogation like that, so I think that's the important thing, because in opera it's about appealing to emotion too. It's not just rational. I mean, even though Brecht would like to make, Bertolt Brecht would love to make music rational. It's not really a rational exercise. It's like the reason we do things in music is that's part of it, with the appealing to the emotional subtext and what's going on, and how and sometimes even the psychological aspect of that, but also to realize that our connection to these stories, that we are Yusef Salaam and we are, Corey Wise, or we are Malcolm X, or we give the sensation that the audience wants to sing Allahu Akbar and join the Nation of Islam. Why is that such appealing? Why did so many men, and particularly coming out of prison, convert? And you see it because it offered something, offered hope, another kind of another way of thinking of the world that was positive, not the negativity that was all around them. So some of that is I like to make, like in X, it was sort of like about creating this movement, and then Tania was about, okay, what happens when you're brainwashed? That's the downside of that. You can be seduced into something that without a cult. How do we relate to a cult? So that what's the fire? What's the appeal? Why are people drawn to cults? All those things are very, very interesting in terms of music, because I once had a criticism of a critic who said, I was writing music about the wrong things because I was so interested in political things, and I wasn't interested in love. That the opera should be about love, but what it's about though is seduction, and there's all kinds of seduction. There's seduction that's sexual, and there's seduction that is about believing in something beyond the human, or beyond what your own individual capacity is. And that there are dangers and perils in that, and there are positive things about belief.
Yeah, fantastic. It's just occurring to me how perfect it is that you are our first composer, because this piece is called Our Voices, and you bring a voice, and you're telling stories in the opera world that I sincerely hope and I believe are going to become part of the canon. We were talking about that earlier too, moving forward, that these pieces, it'll be a great day when conservatories and opera companies have the diversity to program these pieces more often, because
that's great. Yeah.
They are absolutely fantastic, as our audience is about to hear. So thank you for being a part of this project. Thank you for all the time you spent with our students.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed so much working with them, and I'm so excited to see what the end result is, and I know they put in so much work, and so I'm very excited about it.
Well, they've loved getting to know these pieces as much as I have, and I hope you enjoy, and to our audience, I hope you enjoy as well. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Stephen.
We've had only 50 years to try our experiment, to heal the blood and tears and trials of war. and begin to invent a nation built on liberty. Only 50 years since the Bill of Rights, we learn its meaning only from day to day. How each man must test what we say and do, how we uphold this liberty. And yet we know the author of our existence gives us his conditions, the means to sow the seeds of true compassion, to protect and improve man. We dwell with satisfaction upon our dreams and vision, yet we forget liberty's power. Liberty's power. Liberty's power. The nation blessed with the greatest liberty must exert the greatest power to secure liberty for one, thus liberty for all. And still we forget the greatest liberty, the greatest liberty brings the greatest power, but only to be used for the greater good. Could God intend us to do otherwise? My bunghole was still. Then I could hear the wind, a fierce wind rising. The night was pitch black. When loud came the call, drop the sails a storm. The sails battled a gusty wind, belted down they came. The sheets snapped wildly against the mast. I thought I heard thunder. The ship seemed to come asunder. When the lightning crackled, I saw their faces. The lightning cracked again. I saw their faces plain. I heard men running and falling. Calls, bloody calls kept coming. Again the light was gone. The night was pitch black. But I felt them machetes going against my neck. Murder! The men hollered, kill the animals, kill them all! I could not make a sound. I could only move where their blades would guide me. They were pitch black, stealthy like panthers, their claws at my neck. Now that the truth has come, why does it hurt more than the lie that brought me so low? always give me honor. They came to the water's edge, bringing sweets and flowers as offering. I have a taste for honey, sweet amber hidden in the tree, and sweet blossom red and fragile, fragrant and short-lived. They grow in the earth, unknown to me. But they come as if from the heavens, creatures of the earth, from the heavens, falling into my body, passing through my dancing and clinging. My skin mirrors and clouds, sweet tall and sky, blood and sinew, blood and sinew, blood and sinew, pulled down by my heaving wings. I am the waters that run through the hands, through the skin and back into the vast within. They come as if from the heavens, creatures of the earth. Seeds spit from me unto the land. Not like an offering, not like the honey, the blossoms, not like the honey, the blossoms, the sweet smells I crave. But screaming from like wasted dead leaves, broken tree limbs, lifeless shells. Give them to the fire first. Give them to the fire first. When they come to me, the fire is still inside them, burning from within. Give them to the fire first. See them from memory. Do not offer them to me. Amid and screaming. Let them know the fire's emptiness, so I may soothe them with my fullness. Give them to the earth, let them fly till life is gone. Suck the air from their lungs and clear their souls of all regret. Let them be clean of the pain. Do not offer them to me, but we will face sorrow. Let them know the air's loneliness. Let them know